Greetings, Indie Warriors, and welcome to I Dream of Indie. My name is Old Gamer Joe, bringing you another review today of JRPG Rise of the Third Power on the Nintendo Switch. And for me, this was one of those games where I was able to tell pretty much from the opening moments that I was going to be in for one hell of an epic journey. If you're a fan of classic JRPGs like Final Fantasy VI or Chrono Trigger, you know, the Golden Age RPGs, you're in for something special here, let me tell you. I was a big fan of Stegosoft Games' previous effort, Arafel. I thought it was an outstanding JRPG that didn't really get the credit it deserved, but I feel like Rise of the Third Power is going to get much more recognition as it's a better game in almost every aspect. No prior knowledge is needed whatsoever to jump right into Rise of the Third Power. In fact, thematically, it's quite a bit different from its predecessor and more reminiscent of a classic Final Fantasy game. You have castles and knights and all of the great stuff that we loved from the early 16-bit era, as well as some really compelling, well-written characters, which are perhaps the most important aspect of any JRPG. While the developers do admit that this game is loosely based on the political climate of the 1930s in Europe, this game has a lot to say, and it does a lot on its own to stand out. In fact, I'm being a little bit cagey about story details here just because it is one of the finest aspects of this game, full of surprises and a lot of heart-wrenching moments. The storyline, which is drenched in politics, begins with two unlikely heroes or mercenaries attempting to capture a princess for reasons that will be revealed the more and more you play this game. There is a lot of turmoil going on, there are a lot of warring factions throughout this game, and if you don't like politics, this story may not speak to you. That said, this game does a phenomenal job of giving each character their own motives and personalities. You start out with Rowan, a drunken pirate who has fought alcoholism for the majority of his life and has his own reasons for drinking, and his partner Karina, who has a bubbly personality. The two bounce off of each other really well. In a story that really reminded me of one of my favorite JRPGs, Suikoden, with all of the politics and warfare going on. Let's just say you'll meet more and more characters, there's lots of amazing, crazy twists that perhaps you won't see coming, and lots of fun dialogue between all of these characters. Even though they are radically different from one another, I fell in love with each and every new party member that I met, particularly the princess herself. Right out of the gate, Rise of the Third Power has great accessibility options for players. You can turn off any flashing lights in the game, which I definitely appreciate. You can adjust the shadows, which the shadows are really phenomenal in this game. I'll touch on that a little bit more when I talk about the graphics, and then you can choose different difficulty options. There's a story mode, which obviously if you just want to enjoy the story aspects of this game, it gives you an option to quickly win all of the battles. It's optional to use, so if you do want to partake in battles, you certainly can, but it's a nice option for players that are more or less in it for the story. I chose the normal mode myself, which is pretty standard JRPG fare. I felt like it was a decent challenge, but not overly difficult. And then you have a hard or expert mode for fans of this genre that want more of a challenge. As you would expect, Rise of the Third Power has plenty of towns to explore, labyrinths and dungeons to get through, with all of the battles being optional, so you can see each character on screen before you encounter them. Similar to a Chrono Trigger, there are no random battles in the game whatsoever, even on the world map, so it's nice that you can easily avoid battles and sneak up on enemies for a surprise attack as well, which isn't all that difficult. Being a bit of a crazy person myself, I took on every single battle that I encountered, just because I love turn-based battle systems, and in particular, I love the one that they use here, so I wanted as much experience as possible, and yeah, that's up to you. You probably can get away with skipping quite a few of these. I took my time, I had a great time with this game, so why not do every battle? While on the surface, the game may seem to feature a fairly standard turn-based combat system, there's some nice twists on a familiar formula here that do help the game to stand out quite a bit. For one, each character gains MP back in their own unique ways. Karina will gain it over time in battle, while Rowan here, for example, will have to take damage in order to get magic points back. At the conclusion of each battle, you'll also gain 50% of your MP points back. I like this because you weren't necessarily always going into the item menu and having to put all these ethers onto your characters, so it was refreshing. Each of the 8 different characters that you'll come across throughout your adventure have their own unique set of skills and abilities to be learned. There's a very simple skill tree throughout the game. Leveling up is a bit of a grind, it takes time, and each of those characters is going to have their own skill tree, so you'll have to carefully divide up the skill points that you earn, and you can really kind of pick and choose which character characters you want to favor, or if you want to evenly disperse these different skill points and go at your own leisure and make everyone kind of on the same playing field. I love the unique skills of each character and the option to swap in and out. You can do up to 3 swaps between all of these characters. You can only have 3 in at a time, but having the ability to swap in and out does add an element of strategy that I definitely appreciated. It's also really cool that you have a special meter that fills up over time, and some of these characters will interact with one another to do team-up moves that are super powerful and really cool to watch. So to be clear, you're all leveling up at the same time and getting stronger, but those talent points, as the game refers to, can be given out at your own pace, and you can choose which characters you want to learn new skills, etc., etc. It's a great little system, and so too is the equipment system in this game, which doesn't involve having to go to villages and buy new equipment every single time you come across a new location. Rather, you gather materials and you build your equipment, and that equipment stays attached to you throughout the game, assuming you have the right materials. In general, Rise of the Third Power does a great job of doing away with a lot of the tedious methods of the past. The experience system is easy enough to understand, the crafting is also quite simple, and you'll gather enough materials without having to go too much out of your way. It's fun to unlock these new equipments that you can have with you forever and see your characters get stronger and stronger. I absolutely loved it. I will say though that some of these dungeons can drag a bit and feel rather long. That's again probably due to me fighting every single enemy, but I did feel like there were moments throughout the game that did drag out just a hair. Another little frustrating part of Rise of the Third Power is on occasion it can be hard to tell that there's an exit to a certain area. A tree might be obscuring it, or it might just not look detailed enough to know that you can go off screen to a new area, and that led to me wandering around quite a bit at times. That's a little bit annoying, but it was fairly infrequent. What's not annoying is the way that this game innovatively uses inns, so you're not just sleeping for the night, you have the option of eating a good meal that will have some perks that carry over to your next few battles, and it's a really handy system as well. The game also has auto-saves and the ability to save at any time, so you'll rarely lose any progress. You don't have to worry about that. So Rise of the Third Power has great writing, awesome characters, a really fun battle system, a permanent equipment system that's a blast to use, and some cool side quests as well that you can partake in that aren't super out of your way and do feel unique and rewarding from one another. But how about those visuals? Boy, I absolutely love them just as much as I did in Arafel. The lighting in this game was really quite incredible. As I mentioned at the top of this review, you can adjust it, but I was super impressed with every pixel and all of the heart that went into the art of this game. My only little knock against it is that some of the character portrait arts do look similar to one another, with facial features like noses that all kind of look the same. That was a little bit disappointing, but the beautiful pixel art, all of the different settings, some of them do look similar to one another, yes, but overall, a glorious looking 16-bit RPG that does harken back to the Super Nintendo and some of those wonderful graphics, a huge overworld map that looks detailed and phenomenal. I absolutely love the graphics of this game, and the glorious, epic soundtrack. It is just emotionally stirring. It hits at the right moments, at the right times, with the right story beats. It comes together beautifully. I will say that there are certain battles where some metal licks do come in, and it feels a little bit out of place. Those tracks are still awesome though, but man, this has one of my favorite battle themes ever. For the first half of the game at least, you get this amazing like Pirates of the Caribbean sounding tune that I just loved hearing over and over again. I know that's a knock for a lot of RPGs that you hear these tracks ad nauseum. I never got tired of any of these though. They are phenomenal compositions. And Rise of the Third Power is a breathtaking experience from beginning to end. It is full of emotional moments that hit you right in the gut. It looks great, it plays great, it's just a glorious callback to 16-bit JRPGs, and honestly, I haven't felt this way about a game since I played Final Fantasy VI all those years ago, with such compelling characters and such an amazing world full of villains and other characters that you care about so much. This is probably the easiest Golden Genie lamp I ever had to give out, and this is also one of the best games I've ever played. Thank you so much for watching the latest video from I Dream of Indie. We would now like to take a moment to pay tribute to our great indie warriors who support us through channel memberships. Bill T, Christian Cruz, Kevilo, Mitchell Hall, Chris Jackson, Nathan Moore, Adriana Amato, CJR, C Coil, Skepticism, Haley, Julian Colbus, Jen Rose, Jesse, CPM, Bunny, JRS the 8th, Ray Lynn, Marky Mint, Dave Harp, Peekaboo, Lex Noyle, Eric, and PSC. Thank you so much for all you do for independent developers, publishers, and for I Dream of Indie. Everybody else, please head down to the description box below. Let's defeat the gaming echo chamber and bring a voice to the voiceless ones in gaming.